Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Lucas, and I have Eric here as always.
Hey guys.
And today we'll be discussing the hotly contested Republican Senate primary in Pennsylvania that is happening this Tuesday. We're going to make one video right now on the Republican primary, and we'll be making a separate video on the Democratic primary later today. This is a very, very competitive primary, so stay tuned to see what our predictions are. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So I'll give a little bit of background on this election. So the current incumbent, Pat Toomey, the Republican, is not running for re-election. He's going to be retiring. When he announced this, Sean Parnell, who ran for Congress against Connor Lamb, announced that he was going to be running for the seat, but Donald Trump and Donald Trump actually endorsed him as well. But a couple months into the race, Sean Parnell had this scandal with custody over child and his ex-wife, I believe. And as a result, he dropped out of the election. After that, literally a storm happened of random bunch of candidates coming in. First was Dr. Oz, very famous for his TV show. He announced he was running. And then there was David McCormick. He's a hedge fund manager from Connecticut. And then literally a slew of candidates just decided to run. So then the race got very, very interesting because Dr. Oz first, he got the Trump endorsement. But the problem with Dr. Oz is his favorability ratings are pretty bad. They were like 46% favorable and then 46% unfavorable. McCormick and Oz at, I would say 1 month ago, they were the two frontrunners and they were the only two people everyone was talking about. All the debates, they were just going at it against each other, and all the ads, they were just going at it after each other, not focusing on anyone else in the race. And they were correct, right to be, because they were the only two frontrunners at the time. Then, literally out of nowhere, at the beginning of May, Kathy Barnette started surging, like literally out of nowhere, and gained a ton of momentum. She was polling in like single digits, and now she's at like 23, 21, 24%. She's been polling like literally in the top two. So that's what's made this race so interesting right now, is that it's really anyone's game between Kathy Barnette, David McCormick, and Dr. Oz. Kathy Barnette is the very, very far right candidate. She said a lot of controversial things about LGBTQ people, about Black Lives Matter, about a variety of topics. David McCormick is like also pretty hard Trump, as is Dr. Oz. All of them are, but I wouldn't say as far right as perhaps Barnette is. And a lot of Democrats really do want Barnette to win because they see her as the easiest candidate to defeat. So now let's talk a little bit about perhaps the endorsements we see in this race. Dr. Oz seems to have been getting the Trump support. He's been getting a lot of those people like Donald Trump, Ben Carson, a lot of his former cabinet members supported Dr. Oz. But interestingly enough, David McCormick is getting, I would say, more of like the establishment support. He's getting like Ted Cruz to support him, like Huckabee. So that's what's interesting. Barnette hasn't really gotten too many endorsements. She got perhaps some like far-right endorsements, such as Doug Mastriano, who we'll be discussing perhaps in a later video, who's running for governor. So with that being said, let's head into our predictions. Eric, how about you start first on what you think?
Yeah, and just to point to why Barnette may have surged, and not just Barnette, but like a lot of different people, I think in this particular race, the debates that they held got a lot of attention. Um, each candidate had a chance to speak their mind, a lot of different topics. And, because before that, a lot of them were kind of unknown. And this debate kind of just opened up to people what everyone thinks. And as Lucas said, quite a few of them said quite a few outrageous things, which for better or for worse, made everyone get more popular, more trending, and just more discussed, which is why we see so many people like Barnette and McCormick and Dr. Oz, who was there before, but still maintain his popularity in such a race. And I'm not sure if this trend is going to stay like this, but let's go back to like 2020 when Donald Trump, in a small margin, but still was voted out in Pennsylvania, and Joe Biden did win that election. I think in a state like Pennsylvania, where it's such a swing state, it's not exactly the most likely that they're going to all of a sudden vote for such an extreme far right candidate. There are quite a few moderate Republicans in this state that are very important for these Republican candidates to get. And just any four of these candidates, none of them really appeal to the right electorate in Pennsylvania because a bulk of the economy here comes from farming and industry, right? And who do we have here? We have a hedge fund manager or a former hedge fund manager, we have an author, and we have a doctor that are running, right? So none of them really know and encapsulate the right people in order to win this race. So it's really is a toss-up, as Lucas said. But out of all of these three main candidates, McCormick, Oz, and Barnett, I think the most likely one, whether or not Democrats want it to happen, I think McCormick is probably going to win this primary. That's my opinion, and it's going to be a really close race. But he just seems the most establishment, as Lucas said, and he also has the most establishment endorsements. So I think with all of that in mind, Pennsylvanians are kind of going to stay down the middle, and that's quote unquote because he's still pretty Trump aligned, but just relatively speaking, the most quote unquote moderate out of all these candidates. That's why I think he's going to win.
So then I guess for the first time in RDP history, we're going to have different predictions for this primary. I would actually disagree with Eric here. I think that Kathy Barnett's actually going to pull out the victory. I think that she's going to be riding enough on her momentum to end up winning this election. I think that part of the reason why I say this is because of Mastriano right now. Mastriano is also the far right candidate running for governor, and he's gotten a lot of support in the polls recently, perhaps for his far right rhetoric. I think they're trying to pander to the far right Republican conservative base in the state. And I think a lot of those voters are going to be energized and they will come out in support of Barnette for, perhaps how extreme she is. Ultimately, I think that even though Pennsylvania is a swing state, I don't think enough Republican voters have in mind this electability factor in the general election that they will actually consider it and vote for someone that's less extreme and towards the center. And as a result, I do think that Kathy Barnette will end up pulling out the win, although very narrowly in the primary. And I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong on this because again, it's a really big risk making this prediction considering that she has been up in any polls. But I think that she will be able to ride on the momentum to win on primary day. And what's interesting is this primary is kind of similar to the past two primaries we've covered. Ohio and hold on, what happened last week? It'll come back to me. But Ohio, we saw Matt Dolan, surge at the last minute and almost won. It's almost exactly the same thing as what we're seeing here, except Matt Dolan was a moderate, Kathy Barnett's far right. Last week, I remember now, was we saw Lindstrom in Nebraska. He was also kind of surging towards last week. He was also a more moderate candidate. So let's see if the Kathy Barnette momentum actually sticks and see if she actually ends up winning this primary. And I think that wraps up this video for today. Eric, is there anything else you want to add?
No, not really. This is gonna be a close race, and I'm really curious to see who wins this primary.
Yep. And with that being said, that's the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you like this content, please hit subscribe. We'll see you in our next episode, hopefully later today.
See ya.